There's a video that went out of you meeting President Biden, and you said you love him.
Mr. President, take care. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Love you.
I'm curious how it was, what it was like for you to meet the President of the United States of America, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you think about his stance, I guess?
Getting in trouble now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful People Podcast. So happy to have you here. We sat down with the one and only Eli Beer from United Hatzalah, the founder of United Hatzalah, volunteer for United Hatzalah. And we speak about a lot of things, one of them being, of course, the experience of the United Hatzalah volunteers on October 7th, what they had to go through, what they saw. Of course, Eli Beer meeting President Biden, telling President Biden that I love you. We discuss that and a lot more in this episode. I'm thinking back and forth whether there should be a trigger warning on this episode. Obviously, there are some sensitive things discussed, some stories that people, might find a little too much detail in. So viewers' discretion is advised. I want to give a big thank you to our friends at Rothenberg Law Firm, injurylawyer.com. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you need a lawyer, you make sure to head to injurylawyer.com. It could be that you got injured in the workplace. It could be that you were in a biking accident, a car accident. There's a case of workers' negligence or workers' compensation. Whatever it may be, you can have your case evaluated for free at Rothenberg Law Firm. That is injurylawyer.com, injurylawyer.com. Head there today. Get your case evaluated for free. You don't need to do this alone. You can have the Rothenbergs in your corner. A big thank you to Eli Beer for coming on the show, coming to the studio, and making this happen. It was great to catch up with him. And this is our episode with Eli Beer.
You are listening to the Meaningful People Podcast.
The podcast featuring our nation's most impactful, influential,
and meaningful people.
We're excited to have you here. This is the second time you've come on Meaningful People. I'm so happy to have you sitting here. And I want to just jump right in. A lot has happened since last time we spoke. The world has changed. The entire world. For sure Israel, where United Hatzalah is most prominent. I remember speaking to you shortly after October 7th. You FaceTimed me, and we were talking, and you looked exhausted. And you were telling me a little bit of what was going on, what you guys were going through. So I want, if you could just talk to me about, just take me to October 7th. Talk to me about how that day started for you and for your team. And we'll make our way to present day and talk about some important topics. But let's start there.
Well, I still living in the same day, October 7th. It's so mind-boggling that I don't feel like a day passed. I still feel like I'm in October 7th. I think I'm wearing the same jacket as I wore on October 7th every day. And I'm waking up with it. It's like you're waking up in the same day. And for us, because it's not over. It's not over. October 7th is the longest day in history. And now, look what's going up north in Israel.
Yeah.
No one really realizes that the south is terrible. But the north is getting worse and worse every day, and we don't know what's going to be. So for us, it's still going on in full capacity. October 7th was the worst day of my life. I've been to many situations where that was my worst day, but there is no question. If you take all these days that were my worst days and put them all together, it's nothing compared to one day like October 7th. And I will never forget running to the United Hatzalah dispatch. And I don't know if you've been there, but it's unbelievable. It's like one of the most advanced command centers, 911 centers in the world. Like with the technology that we have, we put so much into it. And I see 556 emergency calls waiting. This is like
Is that unusual?
7:15. We usually have one or two, and we answer the phones right away. We always have
Like, what's the call volume in a day?
2,000.
Every day, 2,000.
Yeah,
So
but
600 by 7 a.m. is highly unusual.
No, five.
And at the same
it's
moment.
crazy.
At the same
moment,
moment, right.
and we can't answer the phones. You can
Right.
answer one at a time. And we didn't have enough people, and people calling and calling, and people calling everyone. People called police. All their phones fell down. They were collapsed. And the army had no phones to call, so people were under fire. People were hiding people. And I said, this is a cyber attack. This is a cyber attack. This is not real. And we realized it was real. And we had only 10 dispatchers because at time in the morning, on Shabbos morning, we had half non-Jewish, half Jewish. We always have on Shabbos. Arabs, volunteers, and Arabs answering phones about Jews hiding inside. And everyone was crying, including the Arab volunteer. It was crazy. And all of a sudden, one of the guys gets a phone call of a little boy. He's 9 years old, and he's talking very low, so they couldn't hear him. And then they had to make the volume higher. And he's 9 years old. His name is Michael. And he said, I'm hiding with my sister in a closet. She's 6 years old. And my mother and father were just murdered I saw them getting murdered by terrorists. This is a little boy in Kfar Aza. And the dispatcher, he says, is this real? Is this real? Like, this is early, like 7:30 this was. And the dispatcher is a professional dispatcher, like United Hatzalah. They train a lot. They're really good. And he says, and the boy says, Tazoli, help me. How do you help a kid? He's in Kfar Aza with 250 terrorists in his kibbutz. How do you help him? He says, I'll help you. And he puts on the phone a professional psychotrauma volunteer of United Hatzalah, a doctor who's a psychologist who volunteers for us. Her name is Tamar Schlesinger. And he says, Tamar, 2 kids. Their name is Michael and Amalia. She's 6 and he's 9. Just saw their mother and father murdered, and their sister, who's 3 years old, Abigail, was also murdered. That's what the kids thought. And
they're hiding.
And they're hiding in that little shoe closet, the size of, smaller than this closet right here. And they see the terrorists from the hole in the closet walking around the house, and the parents are on the floor bleeding all over and dead. And this was the phone call that I realized something is terrible happening here. Terrible. I was crying. I couldn't believe. So she was on the phone tomorrow with these 2 kids, taking care of their neshama, helping them go through this, cope with what they just saw, and protecting them that they shouldn't come out because they wanted to go out. They couldn't stay there. It was too hard for them. And also the noise, it was so scary. She says, now you are the most heroes. You're the heroes of the whole Israel.
They survived. Did they survive?
12 hours. She was on the phone with them for 12 hours straight. And she protected them from going out. A few times they wanted to go out because the terrorists were calling them out in perfect Hebrew. And she knew the terrorists because she was in touch with the army. The army says, we don't have anyone inside yet. Don't let them go out of the closet. So she was with them the whole time, with the army and with them. And 12 hours later, at 8 p.m., Motzei Shabbos, the Seyeret Golani came in. Our volunteers were waiting in the kibbutz in the entrance. They jumped in, they killed the terrorists, and they grabbed the 2 kids from the closet. Later on, we found out the sister of a guy was not killed. She wasn't murdered. She was kidnapped. And 52 days later, she was released in one of the hostage deals.
Wow.
For someone like you who has thousands of volunteers working for United Hatzalah, the day is, as it's unfolding, you're also thinking, well, our job is to treat the people who are injured. Nova is the place where there's probably the most injuries right away at that time. Are your volunteers heading towards there? Are they being told it's not safe? You just got to wait back and sit. And what's that process like running that team? Because of course you're trying to keep everyone safe.
Well, we had a few ground zeros there, and one of them was Nova. And we had five volunteers who were there on call, meaning
they're there during the festival?
Yes.
Okay.
Every big event, you need to have ambulance crews and people on call. So there we use non-Jewish volunteers because it's Shabbos. The pikuach nefesh, but not a pikuach nefesh that's sending people in advance to be there. And Jewish volunteers don't want to be that kind of event.
Right.
You know, just a couple of days ago, I saw the Israel Day Parade here in New York. So they had a lot of Hatzalah volunteers from New York who were there just in case something happened. So we always send people to these big events, Meron. So Meron, like for instance, such a big event, that's 3 years ago, we sent 200 volunteers. So there in Nova, it was 5 volunteers who were Arab volunteers. And then we had another Jewish volunteer who came as a security also that he was Bar Cooperstein. The first volunteer who actually yelled down on the walkie-talkie of United Hatzalah, "I'm under attack," was an Arab volunteer by the name of Awad Darawshe. Awad was screaming. He says, "We're under attack. Everyone's running away, but I'm treating patients." And he was actually treating a young lady who was seriously injured all over her body. She had bullets. And he was trying to save her. And then the terrorists came running towards him. They saw him wearing the Hatzalah vest with the jacket. He had Israeli symbol on him, like the whole thing, like he looked a Jew. And he was speaking Arabic to them, and they realized he's an Israeli Arab. They just shot him and killed him right there. He was the first volunteer of United Hatzalah who was murdered. He killed a girl, of course. And then we realized something is terrible. Like that area, we knew that's like anyone going in. So we had 5 volunteers who were there. 3 were able to escape. 1 was kidnapped and 1 was killed. And then the volunteers of ours who came in, we actually realized how bad it is. Volunteers from all over wanted to go, like Bnei Brak, Yerushalayim, Haifa, Tel Aviv. Everyone wanted to go. So we had to take control over the situation and said in every area we have to leave people in the spot. We allowed in every city, let's say Ra'anana, only 20 volunteers could go. Modi'in, 50 volunteers. So we went and we actually started allocating how many people could go from our area. And we didn't know where to send them. We just said, go in. And under fire, some of them got injured. We had another volunteer killed right after that. So that was a second person of ours who was killed. So Uriah Shalem. And then we realized something really bad has happened. And then we found out our 4th volunteer was kidnapped. And we had members of Hatzalah there, and he was trying to help. And then we see his walkie-talkie is we have special machines that we give volunteers, like not the same walkie-talkies as Hatzalah use here. It's like GPS. We know exactly where they are 24/7. We see it in Kfar, in Khan Yunis about an hour later. So we realized either he was kidnapped or he was stolen. And 3 days ago, he was just found in his kibbutz, actually completely burned. Oh. This is 8 months after. They thought he was kidnapped. And he was just at a funeral yesterday in Eretz Yisrael.
That must be difficult for you. You're the leader of this organization, the founder of it, to hear such a thing. I mean, there's probably hope that he was still alive. You're hoping.
Look, I was davening for him every day. He was part of our family. Every day we're in touch with his father, his mother, his brothers. He had, besides for him, his sister was kidnapped too. And his brother-in-law was kidnapped. So the whole family is like devastated. His wife gave birth a few months later. So they had 4 children now, 4 orphans. Dolev Yehud Zichrono Livracha. Hashem Yikom Damo. Amazing guy. You would see his face. He would say, this is like a malach. And he gave his life for Am Yisrael. He could have stayed in the bomb shelter like a lot of other people hiding. But he knew wearing this vest and this logo, he has to go save people. And that's what happened. 1,700 of our volunteers just ran in. We could have had more, but we had to stop them.
Did you personally come face to face with any terrorists or any combative situation on that day?
I had a situation where behind me, in this was the second day already. October 7th started in Shabbos, but went on for 5 days or 6 days. They stole terrorists everywhere. Couldn't find them. They were like rats coming in and out. They were hiding, and I was right next to Kfar Aza on the main road, and all of a sudden the terrorists started running towards us, and they had tanks there and army, and I didn't realize what was happening, and all of a sudden the tank started turned around and takes them jumped. I got so scared. The tank started chasing after the terrorist. The terrorist shot a soldier who was killed. Unfortunately, he was injured. We were treating him, and then he died. But the terrorist was right there. And we faced, as United Hatzalah, over 100 terrorists that were either caught or killed by our volunteers. That really were there, and they had to stop them because either volunteers of ours jumped on them with weapons. A lot of our volunteers carry guns for protection. And they were all over. There were thousands of them, talking about 3,000 terrorists.
we're talking about these atrocities with terminology that makes sense to us, but the human condition is such that we, until someone actually encounters this type of atrocity, we have no way of processing it. And I'm wondering, as you're in these moments, of course, I imagine you're operating on autopilot, and there's no time to process anything. You're just springing into action, and you're in a 5-day long period where you're just doing the next thing that needs to be done, and then the next thing that needs to be done, and you're just robotically making your way through what needs to happen. And I'm wondering how, I know you mentioned at the beginning that the day is still going on. Where are you drawing that strength from to not just fall apart and maintain that resolve to do whatever it takes to keep fighting this fight?
I think one of the nicest things that gave everyone chizuk was the hugs. Everyone was hugging each other. Volunteers, Hasidim, Litvaks, secular volunteers. They just needed it. They were hugging each other all day. It was just amazing to see, because we would have fallen apart. And we had volunteers who were still going through tremendous trauma and post-traumatic stress and going through treatments. But the hugs are what saved us, really. And I remember just walking around everywhere, like no matter if they still had shooting somewhere, and one volunteer gives a hug to the other volunteer, and it just all day people were hugging each other, and that gave us the strength. We are one. We're going to fight together. We're going to win this. And I gave probably 100,000 hugs that few days. I'm not kidding. If we had to count how many hugs I get.
There's a video that went out of you meeting President Biden, and you said you love him. I'm curious how it was. What it was like for you to meet the president of the United States of America, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you think about his stance?
I'm getting in trouble now. So I'll tell you something. I really, in that moment, loved him. Honestly, I never felt so loved and felt love back from the person who was the strongest person in the world, the president of the United States. That 10 days later, after the war started, comes to Israel. And I got invited to meet with him. And I sat an hour and 15 minutes with him. And he kept asking me questions, and I kept asking him questions. And I felt like he really cares about us. This is in the first few weeks.
Right.
I think I did, and that's what I heard from Israeli government officials, including the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, who told me that saying that I told him meant something to him. It meant something to me too. And the fact that he gave me a hug, and I gave him a hug, and he gave me 4 or 5 hugs, and he had tears of his eyes on my shoulder. Like I felt his real love. That was the beginning before he found out what's going on in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania with the voting. But he was actually, let's put it this way. I'm not a politic. I met with Trump 2 weeks later, and I got a hug from Trump too. And I don't care, Trump and Biden, I want people to support Israel. Now, I'm not getting into the American politics, although I could vote here. I have a voting. I'll decide whatever I want to vote for. And everyone should use their judgments. But right that moment, we needed all the support we could. The world was turning against us really, really quick. I mean, maybe 2 hours after the attack against us started, the countries said Israel's the fault. A lot of countries, of course. Qatar and many other countries were just pushing the narrative. So when President Biden came to Israel, and I got to tell him the stories that I saw, that my volunteers saw, he started crying, and I felt like this is the president of the United States. He loves us. And I asked him, where's your love come from to Jews? I asked him. He says, my father taught me that our job as Christians is to love the Jewish people. And he says, after the Holocaust, my father says, we need to protect the Jewish people. That saying that I said, it was very genuine. Doesn't mean right now I would say the same, I think it's a little wore out a little, but I have a kar satov. I have a little appreciation of what he helped us in the first few months, which was unbelievable.
If he was sitting in front of you right now, what would you say to him?
I would say to him, remember the words you told me. The first 2 weeks of the war, that you will stand beside Israel, no matter what, until Hamas is defeated. You said that to me. You said that to everyone. You said, I'm here as the president of the United States because although I'm not Jewish, I'm a Zionist and I will protect Israel. And I'll just try reminding him because a lot of people wanted him to forget what he said.
A crisis has a way of clarifying people's values, and then things get blurry over time.
Look, I think he meant well, and he really, in the beginning of the war, and everyone says that. I spoke at the RJC a few weeks later, a week later or 2 weeks later, the Republican Jewish Coalition, in front of Nikki Haley, Mike Johnson, Donald Trump, everyone was there. And I told him what the president said, and I showed love to the president in front of all these Republicans. Everyone said Hakarat Tov, showing gratitude to the president, was very, very important in that moment. And people actually appreciated the fact that I said, and I think besides for Trump, everyone else praised the president. That moment, that was that moment. Trump did not. But I think that was important for us.
Definitely the moment was, it was beyond politics.
Beyond politics. And I think we have to remind the president. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still the president until at least November or January. This has to be, our goal is to make sure the president should not be an honest negotiator. He should not. Like he always says, America wants to be always the honest, how do you call it? The moderator, the honest. No, America.
Bipartisan?
What?
Bipartisan?
Yeah, he should not. He's on our side. When they do negotiations with the Hamas, he should not be on the side of the negotiator. He should be the side of Israel. This is the only country in the world. Think about it. Iran has 140 countries aligned with them. It's countries who are bad countries like China, like Russia, like North Korea, like Venezuela, like many, many countries. Now, Chile, Colombia, you name it, most of the countries in the world. We have very few countries. And the first one is the United States. They should be on this side of the table with us. Fighting Hamas, because Hamas is not against the Jewish people. Hamas is not against Israel. Hamas is against the entire world. Hamas want to come here to 5 towns.
Well, look, Hamas killed your Arab volunteers. They're Arab volunteers.
They don't care.
I'm
They want anyone who's not aligned with them.
I think
is
it's
dead.
important for people to hear. You have Arab volunteers working United Hatzalah answering dispatch calls on October 7th, and they're hearing what's going on. What was their reaction to all this? They were basically seeing ultimately a war unfold between not people they would identify with, obviously. Just because they're Arab doesn't mean they're, Hamas at all. It's an important distinction to make.
Very important.
But was that complicated at all?
It was interesting. I was in the room looking around the United Hatzalah dispatch center, the 122 center that we have, 1221 center, that's our phone number. And I'm looking around and I see half the guys are Arab. Muhammad, Ahmed, all these guys, Ashraf, all these guys are sitting there among the Hasidim. Oh, by the way, some of them ran out of shul with the talises. So you see, I was like deja vu to Yom Kippur War. I was a little baby, but
yeah,
that was the pictures coming out of Yom Kippur or people running out of talises. That's what we had. And Arabs are sitting next to them and you see the Arabs crying. And I was like, they were worried about Israel. They were really worried. They didn't want their families to get hurt. We had to put armed guards outside of the United Hatzalah Center because we're in the entrance to Yerushalayim. We were sure terrorists could just come in because there was no police coming from Sderot to Yerushalayim besides from one police car. What happens if 300 terrorists decide to come towards Yerushalayim? So we were really, really worried. They were worried, and I could say just everyone loves to, generalize. It's easy. But I want to tell you something. And I'm saying something, and I am totally, an Israeli who loves Israel, Judea and Samaria. I live in Ramot, which is over the Green Line, according to the UN. We love Israel. Israel is one, the whole country. But in Israel, we have 2 million Arabs living. These 2 million Arabs, since October 7th, became more aligned with Israel than in the history of Israel. And I'm saying something that I know. They are more aligned. The ones you see in the restaurants and serve you in the hotels, when you come to Israel, have more now to do, have more Zionism in with them than ever before.
Really?
Yes. The ones who live in Israel. I'm not talking about the Palestinians who live in over the Green Line. I'm saying something that people will have a hard time.
Is it something that the Israelis feel? Do they feel that? Like, oh, the Arab, workers in the Waldorf Astoria they're cool with it? Like, tensions are high. Are they to be trusted?
Look, as we say, no one, you have to always, evaluate people, but I can just say that in general, the Arabs in Israel that live in Israel, the Israelis, don't want Hamas to control. They don't want Hamas to come in East Jerusalem. They don't want to come to Yerushalayim. They hate the Hamas now for what they did. Many Arabs were murdered on October 7th. I can just tell you a small, very interesting story that happened to me last week. My son is serving in Gaza now, in Rafiah, in Rafah. But they had to go back to their base up north, next to Nahariya. And for 7 months, they were not visiting. They were in Gaza for 7 months. So they went out for 2 days, and their entire kitchen was flooded, and they had no kitchen in their army base. So they call me because they know I can help them. The army base, they can't, it's so bureaucratic in the army. To get a new kitchen will take months. So I said, I'll find someone to build a new kitchen. So I sent a message to volunteers of United Hatzalah who knows a carpenter. Within 2 minutes, I got a call from Muhammad, who's a carpenter who volunteers for United Hatzalah. He said, it would be my greatest honor in the world to build a kitchen for this army base, especially I know your son is there. I said, are you Muslim or Druze? He said, no, Muslim. I said, you don't have a problem to do an army base to do a kitchen for an army? He says, they are protecting me. These missiles coming in from Lebanon could hit my home. I want to help the army. I said, this is Mashiach time.
So it's that time of the episode to speak about my friends at Growtha, Josh. But who better to speak about Growtha than Josh from Growtha? Josh, what's up?
Hey there, how's it going?
Can you tell me a little bit about what Growtha can do for companies?
We'll start with a website redesign. We're going to make your website look great. Within around 2 weeks, we're going to have the website ready to launch. We're going to show it to you, you'll love it, and then we're going to launch it. And then we're going to start the SEO on the website. In the meantime, we're also working on the Google Maps SEO optimization. We're going to help your listing on Google Maps rank much higher, and we're going to work hard on all aspects of SEO in the meantime, which means we're going to start doing over 50 articles per month on your website about topics that are relevant to your business, what people are searching for, to attract more people, more potential customers to your website. We're also going to be working on getting the negative reviews to be gotten rid of from your Google Maps listing. The negative reviews, of course, no one likes them. They are terrible. They're going to hurt your SEO, and we're going to try to get rid of them. And we're going to make a lot of SEO optimizations to the website to make our website rank #1 in Google Maps and in the regular search results. At Growtha, we're really here to help you. We actually care about your business, and we work with over 100 companies like yours in drug rehab, home care, assisted living, ABA therapy, nursing homes, and more. We're here to help you get started, and let's start doing SEO for your website. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh, for that. So guys, make sure you head to growtha.com/meaningful for 20% off the first 3 months working with Growtha. Let me tell you, I know numerous companies, people that work with Growtha, and they are extremely, extremely successful because of what Growtha does for them. So make sure you head to growtha.com/meaningful and give them a shot because you will be very happy.
Speaking of the army, I was talking to you yesterday briefly, and something we touched upon is that the hottest thing right now in Israel is who serves. Right? The army needs to be a place where it is fit for good from young boy to be able to serve. You're working on something to make that a reality. Is that so?
This is one of my biggest concerns about a war between our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael. And it's about to burst. I came like 2 weeks after the war broke out to meet with Yoav Gallant in Tel Aviv. It was a really, really bad time. And I said, I need to, the only time he can meet with me was 1 o'clock in the morning in the bunker in Tel Aviv. And the thing I told him I want to solve, and this is the beginning of the war, I said, I want you to give me permission to recruit 10,000 Haredi people. I have what to do with them. The organization now has 7,000 volunteers. I could easily grow with 10,000 more, and give me the ability, and the law should enable us to be an army service for 10,000 people. Because I know, and we all know, the Haredi world is not going to change the uniform from black and white to green. Just not going to happen. It's not the fashion. And to have Hasidic guys, jumping into uniforms, it's not going to happen. We need to do it in a way that's respectable for both and gives Israeli the assurance that the Haredi community are giving. And I know they're giving because Hatzalah is mostly Haredi people. And everyone adores this organization, United Hatzalah, because of that. The secular Jews in Israel love United Hatzalah because we have a lot of Haredi people volunteering. And we also have a mixture between people.
The diversity, I understand, at United Hatzalah is unparalleled.
Unparalleled. There is no organization Israel has kibbutznikim that eat treif, even on Yom Kippur, and from people that on Pesach don't eat kabraks. Everything in between. Think about it. And they all love each other. And this is Achdus. We really have the biggest Achdus, 7,000 people. I said, I want to get 10,000 Haredi people. And he said, I'm in. But then all the politics and everything else, and we're right now in a process of building a program that will solve this problem, because we know that it somehow needs to. So I'm working. This is my main thing that I want to get from people to come serve for 2 or 3 years in Hatzalah, as dispatchers, as trainers, as hospital. We have hospital care in every hospital in Israel.
But you want them to maintain their lavush?
Yeah. Don't change uniforms. I actually think the lavush is so important for the firm people. And I tried explaining it to everyone in the army. I have the top generals in the Israeli army came to visit Hatzalah in the last few months. Everyone came. Yair Lapid came, who became close friends of mine, and he gets it, and he's for it. Avigdor Lieberman was by me 2 days after Bibi came to visit Hatzalah. He was with, everyone's for it. We are the only organization who actually could do it, because we have an organization that is run by halacha, run by firm people. So we get it. It's not like a secular organization like the police say, let's take Haredi people. That's not good. We'll take them, we'll manage them, we'll give them the ability to stay who they are. We don't want anyone to change. The biggest problem with the Haredi world, and we all know that, is how do we let our 18-year-old boy go join the army? He's going to take off his payas a week later. And it's a problem. So how do you solve it? Find organizations like United Hatzalah. And they need to serve for a year or 2 or 3 years. That should be the place.
Do you think that, I feel like the issue is not necessarily a week later they're going to be taking off their payas, but there are a lot of people who are learning in Eretz Yisrael, right? They're in yeshivas. And that is important. Equally as important as those fighting in the front line, if not more. And we can't take those people out of the base medrash and put them on the front lines, right? That's not, are you suggesting that?
No, I'm not saying put them in front lines. But what about putting them in Hatzalah? I have thousands of from people in Kolel, but are in Hatzalah. So why not make it as a mandatory thing for 3 years?
Are you guys in need of more Hatzalah members?
Of course. We need more volunteers. We need more volunteers. We need to arm volunteers so they could protect the community. What happens in the Mir Yeshiva? How do we protect the Mir Yeshiva if 20 terrorists come in? This is something that we could actually solve as a United Hatzalah. We could build programs. Now, I'm not saying Torah is not important. I learn every single day. I learn Torah, right? I have Rabbi Ethan. He's a rabbi in Rabbi Eitan. He's from New Rochelle. He's a caller there. He calls me every day. I learn with him on the phone. That's my chavrusa. I don't have anything, but I think Torah is so important. I'm not saying this is not important, Torah, but I said if you do it with chesed, chesed is the most important thing in a firm Jew's life. I think chesed is you're involved with chesed, you're involved with chesed. Why not make it as a thing that everyone, not everyone, you know what? You'll have an exemption from big Talmidei Chachamim, and every secular Jew in Israel has no problem with it. Take 20% of the Talmidei Yeshivas, they don't have to. They'll be 100% in Torah. But the rest of the people could do chesed. What's so wrong? You do chesed for a few hours a day for 3 years. Instead of holding guns. You don't have to go hold guns and wear a uniform. That's my solution for this biggest problem that could lead to a war between the Jewish people and Israel.
You want to prevent that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally hear that.
My son's in the army. I have no problem if someone else, instead of going to the army, does Hatzalah or goes to other organizations, Zaka, or many other great organizations out there. It should be organizations run by firm people.
Right. How was the on October 7th, I guess, the working hand in hand with Zaka? Like, it's sort of like a tag team. You know, Zaka is sort of the search and recovery. United Hatzalah is trying to treat those who are living. I'm sure you guys are working hand in hand. Do you know, I guess the volume that between United Hatzalah and Zaka, what you guys are dealing with?
Well, listen, Shabbos in the morning, we had 1,700 volunteers. And unfortunately, we were looking for live people. And it was very, very hard to find them. They were either hiding or so badly injured. It was very hard to get to them. So we actually opened a hospital field in the grounds next to Sderot, and we put all the people we found alive. Some of them were last breaths. And we brought them there, and we were really hoping that these are the people we could save. And the people who were dead, if you see the videos, we left them there. And Zaka weren't at Shabbos, so they didn't really operate till after Shabbos. So the whole day we were going back and forth.
Just
and the
around
dead people
them.
were laying there. What?
You're just going around them, practically.
We were driving around the ambulances around them. So the dead bodies were there till Sunday afternoon, some of them, or Sunday night. Thousands, you're talking about 1,200 dead people. So most of the people that were dead, besides for the soldiers, we said to our volunteers, if you see a soldier who's killed on the road, cover him completely. And then at some point, we took our trucks before Zaka arrived, because they came in the masses after Shabbos. And it was still dangerous, but they came after Shabbos. So we brought trucks loaded with equipment, and we said, oh, only the ones, the dead people on the roads, pick them up because it's Shabbos, picked them up and put them in the trucks that brought in the equipment. So around 300, unfortunately, dead people we took with us. And it was also a problem because they had to figure out who's a terrorist and who's not. They didn't want to put them together.
Right.
We had a few situations. We took a terrorist inside of the truck and we found out all of a sudden he had grenades on him and he was a terrorist for that, to take him out. We actually took around 300 people and we didn't know where to put them even. We didn't have a place. No one had a morgue big enough. It was a big problem. So we worked with Zaka for many years. That's what we do. We try preventing from them to work. We want to save people so they don't have to touch them. So we brought all the people who were still alive to one location, one main location. And that's where we decided to bring the helicopters around 11 o'clock in the morning. We call air control and we said we want to bring helicopters. We have 3 helicopters that operate. Ambulance, the most advanced ambulance helicopters. And we said we want to bring them in. And the air control said, no way, you can't bring them in. And they're always tough people. I said, why can't we? They said it's closed. The whole airspace was closed. So I tell Dovi Mazel, I said, Dovi's like my vice president of operations. I said, Dovi, what do we do? He says, we can't operate. I said, people are dying there. We have people bleeding to death, and the hospitals in the south were packed already. They didn't have room. We need to get him to Ichilov. We need to get him to Tel Shomer, to Hadassah. What do we do? So he says, I don't know. I said, I'll call the head of the company that runs helicopters. He says, we don't have insurance. If they say no, we don't have insurance. I said, forget about the insurance. We'll find out. If Chas v'shalom, one of the helicopters get damaged, we'll pay for it. He says, but the pilots are not going to fly. Could you convince the pilots to fly without insurance, without, they could get in trouble? Maybe they'll shut us down. I said, who cares if they shut us down? Tomorrow, we don't even have a country. We have a real war. So he says, call the pilots. I call the pilot. This is 11:10 in the morning, and Shabbos morning. The pilot answers the phone. He says, he starts screaming, what took you so long? I'm waiting in the cockpit for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And they all started flying back and forth. And we rescued hundreds of people that otherwise would not be alive.
Wow.
We'll be right back to this episode of the podcast. But first, a word from our friends at Town Appliance. Yes, the appliance company that's been doing it ever since 1979. And summer is here, so there's some things you might want to be getting for your outdoor setup. Maybe a brand new Weber grill, maybe a refrigerator from GE for your outdoors. You ever think about that? Maybe a freezer? Stuff that you should think about. Barbecue season is here. You want to make sure that your outdoor setup is ready to roll. Nothing's going to hold you back. This is your summer. Yalla po, let's go. We're going to make that siyum during the 9 days. You want to make sure your grill is ready to go. And that's something that you can get at Town Appliance. There's a lot of things you can get at Town Appliance. Well, friends, just head to townappliance.com. Or, you can hit the link in the show notes in the description of this episode. Send them a message on WhatsApp. You want a completely new kitchen? You're working on a new construction? All that can happen with Town Appliance. That is townappliance.com.
I'm wondering from your vantage point, shifting gears for a moment, that I've heard about a lot of chizik missions of people that come from Chutz La'aretz to the Holy Land and are volunteering. They're packing up food. They're packing up supplies. They're doing what they can. They spend their life from a distance and they feel like they want to get involved. And a number of these chizik missions were initiated in the immediate aftermath, but my understanding is that they continue to happen. From your vantage point of being so integrated into the infrastructure there on the ground, how helpful is it when these chizik missions come to do our part from afar?
First of all, I think the chizik missions were really what saved us. I'm not kidding. Like, people came to Israel. We needed a hug. Everyone needed a hug. Like, I don't know, you went to Israel probably, you gave hugs, right? All day. That's what you did. I mean, you don't understand, that could go a long way. To give chizuk to another Jew, no matter who they are, if they're religious, secular, Hasidim, everyone. We are Jews, we're Am Yisrael. And I think a lot of them that stayed to do chesed was unbelievable. We in Hatzalah had a harder time with this because we need professionals and we need people speaking Hebrew and we need a license to operate. So we had missions of people who came to help us for a while, but it's harder for us. But they had organizations like Leket and other organizations that do with farming and a lot of things that were doing chesed. It was unbelievable. And it really helped in the first few months to really save people. I know one guy, he's worth like $3 billion. He was planning to come to Israel. He decided not to come with his private jet. And he came on El Al. And he came to Israel for a week to work the farm. And they didn't know who he was. $3 billion. He's worth he supports United Hatzalah, this guy. So I was quite shocked. He stayed in a kibbutz down south. And part of the job was cleaning the toilets and everything. I think he came to be mechazik, but he came out mechuzak. He came out. He will never forget this trip. This made him a lover of Israel 10 times more. To clean toilets when you have $3 billion in your bank account. But he knew he's coming to help Israel, and it did help because what he did was replace the workers who were not there.
Moshe Weinberger, who we had the opportunity to sit down with in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, he told us from the Kedushas Tzion, one of the Baba Rebbe's, who unfortunately, Hashem Yikam Damai, was taken in the Holocaust, that chazak v'nis chazek, that when you give chizik, there's an ar chayzer, there's a light that returns.
I love it.
The chizik that you get from giving chizik is unlike any other chizik.
Amazing. That's I never really heard that word, and I love it, and I'm going to start using it. It sounds a Rebbe?
One of the Baba Rebbe's, the Kedushas Tzion.
Amazing. Wow.
You've been traveling a lot, and more recently you were in New York, and in some of these major cities, it's mind-boggling. The support is some. You have rallies for Hamas, and we're in America. For someone like you who's so involved, what goes through your mind when you see that?
I wasn't surprised because my father is my role model, and I wrote about my father, but 90 seconds. I don't know if you got to read the book, 90 seconds. My father told me when he was a child, he was raising money to save Jews in the Holocaust. He was born 1928. So when he was 12 years old, he was raising money. Rav Aaron Kotler was very involved with United Hatzalah then. And my father told me stories that were mind-boggling, that sometimes he went to people and they started screaming at him, saving Jews in Europe, blah, blah, blah. He didn't know whether they were Jewish or not. Some of them even said to him terrible things. And he said, all of a sudden, he realized that tens of thousands of people were rallying in the United States, in New York, in the center of New York, against the Jewish people who were getting sent to the gas chambers. And I couldn't believe it. I said, these people were rallying against Jews while we were going into gas chambers? And that was happening. I don't know if your grandparents are alive. Ask them. That was happening in the United States everywhere. The anti-Semites are here since Esav. That's the halacha. Esav sones Yaakov. So I actually heard this from my father. And when these rallies in universities started against Israel, because we were attacking back after they almost destroyed the whole entire Israel, and their purpose was killing every one of us, it didn't surprise me they had rallies, because they had rallies during the Holocaust when we were sent to concentration camps and we didn't kill one German. And that's actually comforting, that, you know what? History is just repeating itself. You know what? Doesn't surprise me. And I don't get excited from it. I see people on the street. I walk like this in the street. Never embarrassed. I was in Paris walking like this, in London walking like this, and I see the people looking at me, and I'm ready to fight back if needed. I never pick up my hand on anyone, but I'm ready to do that.
I think part of what makes it so unconscionable, to Nachi's question of what goes on today, is that back then, just comparing the eras, information just wasn't as readily available back then. So it was almost, and of course, Esav Son Yaakov, it's Mamash Halacha, but it's easy to red sechain and to misconstrue this as ignorance. That, they didn't know what was going on in Europe. So therefore, they were rallying in Times Square.
They blamed the Jews for the World War II. Do you know that? The whole World War II, that millions of people were getting killed fighting, Americans that were fighting, getting killed, British, people blame the Jews for starting the war.
Sure. But that can be erroneously attributed to ignorance, that they didn't have the right information. They were wrong. They were misinformed. Today, the information is so clear. People could relive the atrocities by watching it, but the world is a much smaller place today compared to where it was. And the fact that the anti-Semitism is so overt that even in the face of the reality of what went down and what is going on, people are still rallying to that effect. It's just Esav Son Yaakov. It's just anti-Semitism 101. There's no other way to explain it.
Well, I would say it's racism. You know, anti-Semitism became like they don't even know what the word anti-Semitism, but they know racism against sectors here. So I think the real essence of it is racism against Jews. And it starts from jealousy. So the Jews were always the successful ones in Europe, in the United States. Look at America. Look, we're such a small minority. And the success you could see, I could give you the biggest success of a Palestinian in New York is that shawarma place that he built in 6th Avenue, a big shawarma place in the street that he has a cart. That's the big success. And they look at us, the Jews, they blame us for controlling America, right? So the jealousy leads to hatred. It's really the essence of hatred. What is sinas chinam? Why do you hate someone else? Because you're jealous. So that brings to racism against Jews. And then when Jews are getting killed, they don't care. And when Jews are protecting themselves, they're starting to yell. Jews should not protect themselves. They should just go into the gas chambers. But I heard Rabbi Lau just a few weeks ago. I was in Auschwitz, and he said incredible things. He said in Europe, in Poland, when we were dressed black with long beketches and shtreimel, the goyim that hated the Jews said, "Oh, you look so different. You should not live among us. You dress differently. You should go live in Palestine." Don't live here. But the Jews in Germany were dressed exactly like them. They were just like them. And the Goyim said, no, you're trying to look like us, but you're not really us. You're trying to be like us, but you're Jews. You should go live in Palestine. So now that we're living in Palestine, where do they want us to go? Rabbi Lau said that. I loved it.
It's very interesting. Do you have any stories? I know you guys wrote a book recently after October 7th. Are there any stories that come to top of your mind that you want to mention that took place, October 7th and the time after that?
First of all, thanks. The book I wrote was like really from my heart. It was my second. I thought after the first book, 90 Seconds, I'll never write a book again. It was too much work. But after I started hearing stories about what was going on, and I realized this has to be written down before I forget. And I still forgot a lot of the stuff because it was like literally 22 hours a day. So Archer turned to me for another book called Angels in Orange, which is unbelievable, very inspiring book. So I dedicated the book to the volunteers who were killed and injured and kidnapped. And, Chaim Sassi was one of our volunteers that I love so much. Chaim Sassi is a United Hatzalah volunteer. He's a Rav in Sderot. He's a Dayan. And he's in the Hester Yeshiva there. And he's very incredibly involved with Hatzalah. He goes out to 3 or 4 calls a day. And at 6:45, he got the call that in the police station, they had a shooting. So he thought it was okay, a shooting, terrorist attack. He's used to it. He put on the bulletproof vest, the helmet, and he drove on the ambucycle towards the police station, thinking, usually it takes 3 minutes max to kill a terrorist. So when he got there, all of a sudden he sees 20 terrorists running towards him, jumping off a pickup truck.
Hey.
He couldn't believe it. And they ran towards him. They shot him on his chest. Luckily, he wore a bulletproof vest. He fell off the ambucycle. And then he ran closer to him. They shot him like 4 times, including in his face. Chaim took the walkie-talkie and screams, I heard him. Like, I really realized this is like, we started hearing like attack here, attack in Be'eri, attack in Kfar Aza, attack in Nova, attack here. It was crazy. It was like, my head was like spinning 1,000 miles an hour. I couldn't figure out. And all of a sudden, he's injured. He was under fire for 3 hours. He was able to kill a few terrorists that got close to him with his gun. And he was trapped. And then we had a volunteer, his name, maybe I'm not sure his name, but he's post-traumatic stress. One of our volunteers in Sderot, a tzaddik. But he's in a special hospital because 2 years ago, he saw a child that was hit by a missile in Sderot, and he was trying to save him. The kid died. It was like a 6-year-old boy. And he was, because of all the years that he saw, and he was in a lot of tragedies in Sderot, he went into a post-traumatic stress. He has children. He has a whole family, mishpacha, is a religious guy. And he was hospitalized in a special hospital for post-traumatic people. And they treat him, and he's under medications, but they let him go out for Simchas Torah. After 2 months, he wasn't home. This volunteer was at home. He heard Chaim Sassi was injured. He went crazy, and Chaim Sassi was under attack from all directions with snipers. So anyone who got close to him was killed. The whole police station was burned down. So he decided, as a hero, without, like a Meshuggah, he said, I don't care dying, I don't care anything. He was already going out of his mind because he was post-traumatic. Jumped into his car, started driving toward the police station, jumped out of his car, ran to get to Chaim Sassi, picked him on his back, threw him into his car, and he says, I'm going to the hospital, but they couldn't go through. And he said, I'm going to drive 150 kilometers through 100 miles an hour through the terrorists. And they threw 3 other injured people into the back of his car. And they were all back in his car, and he's there. And this volunteer, his last name is Bar Yochai. So it's like, I always think about Bar Yochai. He's like a miracle. Took 4 seriously injured people into his car, but he was going crazy because blood was bleeding everywhere. So the trauma was coming back to him. So he yells out to Chaim Sassi, tell everyone to stop bleeding. Tell everyone to stop bleeding. Everyone's bleeding. So Chaim Sassi took the bandage that he had on his face. He had a bandage holding his blood coming out of his face because he had a bullet in his face. Took that bullet and he took it in the back of the soldier that was on him, bleeding from his back. He realized that's where all the blood is coming out, and he stuck it in to stop it bleeding. And he was holding it the whole ride till they got to Barzilai Hospital. All 4 people were saved.
Wow.
And this volunteer is unbelievable. I gave him maybe 1,000 hugs. I went to see him.
Baruch Hashem, he was out for Simchas Torah. Baruch Hashem, he was out of the hospital for Simchas Torah.
Yeah, he was there and he saved 4 people.
Who knows? Like,
He saved 4 people. He's still in treatment.
I'm sure he's in double treatment now.
Yeah.
You know what he had to go through. But
And
Hashem really orchestrated.
I want to tell you, we have so many tzaddikim, so many stories. I recommend, I'm throwing a little plug into my book, Angels in Orange. I think it's one of the greatest stories, the greatest books about October 7th, Simchas Torah. But the story is really uplifting. It's not depressing. It's like so many depressing stories. Oh, this family burnt, this family that. We talk about the miracles more than the depressing stories. And I think in the end of the day, and I'm saying something that might get me in trouble. This was October 7th was the greatest miracle for Israel.
How so?
This was planned to be the last day of Israel. This was a plan that was made by, I'm saying things that might sound to people conspiracy. And I said this, some news outlets, I was interviewed yesterday by Fox News. I decided after speaking to them, it's not worth saying this, but I'm saying they had countries that we don't blame that are involved with this deeply. Russia planned everything to the last point. Russia needed something to save them from the world attacking them and watching them while they were trying to take over Ukraine. For 2 years, they're trying everything. They can't get ahead. They're losing in Ukraine. They needed a miracle. Russia doesn't hate Israel. They don't hate anyone. They they love themselves. That's it. But they were planning this whole thing. So others could start a war somewhere else that would take the attention off them, number one. By the way, October 7th was also Putin's birthday. Just coincidence, small coincidence.
So you're saying this is not a conspiracy theory. This is something.
Not a conspiracy
This is
theory.
Intel based.
No, I'm not intel, but I'm just being common sense.
Okay.
Russia had
Now you sound like my father.
what?
Now you sound like my father.
Yeah, maybe a little. Look, I'm not a conspiracy.
My father
guy.
would be like, "Was that?" You would talk like, "Yeah, Netanyahu, Biden's withholding arms. He's not withholding arms." But everybody's saying he's withholding. He's not withholding arms.
Listen,
what's your intel?
I could just say a few things. First of all, just watch a few months before October 7th. How many Hamas members were visiting Russia?
No idea.
Some of them were public. Visitors of Hamas, heads of Hamas visiting Russia. What is Russia? Why did Russia, a few days after the attack, host the heads of Hamas in Russia? The ones from Qatar flew to Russia. Russia was very involved, and Russia is involved, and they say this now clearly.
I gotta ask you a different question also. I mean,
Egypt, I'm just going to
Yeah.
say Egypt. Why was Egypt so against Israel attacking Rafah? Did you
because
think
it's on their
about-
border.
Why would they care? If we
Yeah,
take
maybe they
over
might
one
find some-
side
they
of the
might find
border, they have
some
Hamas. They don't like the Hamas, right?
Right.
But guess what? Once Israel took over after 7 months, finally Israel took over the Philadelphia side of the Rafah, which is the Palestinian side. Egypt went crazy, and now we find out the truth. 8 months of ammunition was transferred every day
From Egypt.
from Egypt. And it got to the top of the leadership there. The money that they got for transporting this ammunition, they don't need the Suez Canal. They have all these tunnels that were transporting goods and ammunition. And think about it. A week after the war started, Palestinians were saying, we don't have any food here. We're starving. The whole world was saying, they're starving. Give them humanitarian aid. But how is it that 8 months they have enough weapons to fight Israel, and Israel's getting shipments every day from America, while these guys, where are they getting shipments for? From Egypt. This is going in from Egypt, and that's why Egypt, once Israel took it over, said they were so angry because that's all money coming in, and that money is going to stop once Israel takes over Rafah. So a lot of things here, no one realized what was going on behind the scenes. Israel trying to protect themselves, in so many evil countries.
That's what you're saying. It really was intended to be the last day of Israel's
It
existence.
was intended to be. We were supposed to have the Hezbollah attack the same way Hamas attacked. And they were expecting the Palestinians living over in the West Bank
to rise up
and go towards Yerushalayim. That was their plan. Yerushalayim was their plan. So yes, 1,500 people died that day. It was terrible, and more died in the war and was suffering so much, and was still suffering. But Hashem really gave us a wake-up call. We had so much sinas chinam in Eretz Yisrael, which we have to work on. All of us have to work on sinas chinam. And that's why I want to do this plan of serving in United Hatzalah as a solution for lowering down the tension between the Jews. And I think that was the greatest miracle, because it could have chas v'shalom led to the destruction of Eretz Yisrael. And Hashem protected us. In the end of the day, we had a miracle, a real miracle. And I saw it in my own eyes. I was sure we're going to have a few hundred terrorists coming into Yerushalayim. How many people were protecting Yerushalayim?
I don't know. You know what? Like, we think back to that day, and I mean, all the political people always say there's going to be a time when this conversation is had, and I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know when it will be, because it's still, like you said, it's October 250th right now. Like, we're still in October. We're still dealing with this. I don't know where, and I've seen the Nova videos. I've seen an hour footage of the people in Nova, cell phone footage, GoPro footage, all that stuff, which I don't recommend anybody seeing. I don't know where Tzahal was. I don't know where the police were. I think that was a question everybody was asking, who was there by Nova. We're interviewing a father later today who lost 2 kids in Nova. It's unfathomable. You say the wrong word in Israel, and you have a tap on your shoulder with a guy with a nice black uniform asking you questions. On October 7th, there's nowhere. These terrorists are running amok for hours.
You sound like your father.
Maybe a little. I don't know. But what's your conspiracy about that?
I don't have a conspiracy. I'm realist. I'm a realistic guy. I'm realistic. Egypt is behind the smuggling of all the weapons, and America gives Egypt billions of dollars. America should reconsider what the relationship with Egypt is, and we should reconsider the relationship with Egypt. They're our best friends, our allies. We're afraid to say a word about them. I'm not a politician. I'm saying the truth. Egypt is responsible for all the weapons coming into Israel. It's all coming in through Egypt. It's not coming in from Israel. They're coming in through tunnels they know where the tunnels are, and the Egyptians said in the beginning of the war, we're flooding the tunnels. We're going to take care of the tunnels. Don't worry about it, Rafah. We're going to take care of Rafah, which my son is in there now. And he says the tunnels are completely set. Nothing was touched. It was all transporting ammunition a day ago before we came. No flooding of no tunnels, and nothing was stopped. So that's number one. Number two, about all our other enemies that we have, we all know. I think what was happening in Israel is it wasn't chas v'shalom, a plan someone did. This was really a failure of our government, our army, of everything. It was a big failure of everything. And it happened in Yom Kippur 50 years ago. And it happened again now. And it could have been the worst day of Israel. Also, Yom Kippur almost ended Eretz Yisrael. For us, I think that what we have to do as Jews is first of all remember that this thing could happen tomorrow again. And never lay down our guns. Never lay down our readiness to fight. What happened in the last
and never
few
to
years,
lay down our faith that the biggest miracle is our very existence.
I started with this was a beer. Hashem gave us a big miracle. I started with that. We have to daven. We have to learn.
Especially
Torah.
here in America, we can't start getting complacent and thinking, okay, we davened. October 7th, October 8th, that you couldn't find a dry eye in America. People were saying Tehillim around the clock. It would be a mistake to give that up now and to think that we go back to life. We saw it with COVID. COVID came. It was a chorban, and then the months go by and people get back to regular life, and we can't let that happen.
It's a tendency. People forget things quickly. We forget that we have a war against our enemies who don't want us to live, and that war is constantly happening. It's not like, okay, they calm down, we have a ceasefire, we could relax. 2 years ago, they had a ceasefire between Israel and the Hamas. I don't know if you remember that. 2 years ago. October 6th, we had a ceasefire with the Hamas. Israel was sleeping, completely sleeping. 90% of the soldiers were home for Shabbos and Simchas Torah. They need to be home too. They're not out on duty. The reservists were not in duty anyways, because they why have reservists when you have the regular soldiers they're doing the 3 years duty. So the 3-year duty guys, they're Sadir like they call them, 90% of them were home for Shabbos. These guys can't jump. They're not Hatzalah that they can just jump and go, like they need to get organized to fight. It takes hours and days, literally days to get organized to fight. And if you really want to go to war, it's more than weeks to get everything properly done. What happened that day, we woke up 5:59 in the morning. We were still in the biggest machlokas Eretz Yisrael was ever in. That was the whole topic.
Yeah.
The Arabs knew that. They knew this is the greatest opportunity for them. They knew we were busy fighting with each other. So they took the chance. They said, why not now? This is it. And they were expecting the Hezbollah to join them. They were expecting the Palestinians to join them, and even the Israeli Arabs to join them. That was the big miracle. Hashem loves us in the end of the day and protected us for 3,000 years. And we're going to be continuing to be protected by Hashem. We have to be, of course, to believe in Hashem and to do everything Hashem asks us, but we also have to do ishtadlus. And part of ishtadlus is to be prepared. We can't say, oh, now it's quiet, we don't have to do anything. And the most important thing is achdus. And that's why I have here a thing called Ichud Hatzalah. I always believe in achdus. And every Jew is equal. And let's embrace that. And you have a big yarmulke on your head. You go to Eretz Yisrael, look, people in Tel Aviv, look at you, who's this guy, a Haredi guy coming here with this big yarmulke? Your smile to that secular Jew will go a long way.
Gewalt. I love the parallel that you drew to the aftermath of COVID.
Yeah.
You know, you, Eli, your life today, every day of your life is a direct result of your own miracle that you lived through that challenge of COVID. And your life was saved, literally. And every day that you wake up, it's clear to you that you're living your life as the result of the miracle of being saved from COVID. And we can all draw upon that parallel that the miraculous existence of Am Yisrael continues every single day. And some days we feel the threat to our existence more intensely, but the reality is that our very existence is a miracle every single day.
I believe that because I went through it. And I will never forget the day I had to say goodbye to everyone. I had a 5% chance survival. My condition was so bad, the doctors could not believe when I woke up and I was back. And people I know that were less serious conditions died that I knew. So Hashem gave me my own personal miracle that day, and I had miracles after that. I had my own miracle on October 9th in that area when I was driving through with my daughter and son-in-law, who are both Hatzalah volunteers. My daughter's a nurse and a paramedic. And all of a sudden we saw, it was 9 o'clock at night. We made a mistake in the road. The GPS was screwed up. And I was driving to see all the volunteers and the kibbutzim that were left. And it was like, we made a terrible mistake. We turned through a road that was closed because they had a suspicion of terrorists there. And we had a telecast. I told my son-in-law, don't put on the lights, that they shouldn't see it. Like, let's drive without the red lights. And all of a sudden we saw like 5 tanks in front of us with soldiers standing there with guns in the middle of the road, and like sharp stop. And like my son-in-law is like, we don't know what do we do? We don't know what to do. You can't move. And they thought we thought we were the terrorists. So they screaming, Titzu, Titzu. And what does that mean, Titzu? Titzu could mean get out of here or get out of the car. We didn't know what he meant. And my son-in-law thought Titzu means turn around because we're at Hatzalah.
Hebrew.
Right? And I don't know how they do that in the police in America. Get out of the car.
They just tase you,
get
honestly.
Out, go away. So he made him say, and while he's turning around, we hear the loading of the ammunition. I thought that was the last second. I said, the last thing I wanted, after what I went through in my life.
You survive COVID and you go with friendly fire.
And friendly fire, which a lot of the people died friendly fire. Also October 7th. So he stopped, and my daughter, Abigail, went out of the car with her hands up, and she goes towards the soldiers. And after like a second, I see the soldiers like, okay, kol beseder. I come out. What happened? They said they have 8 terrorists in this road. How did he get in here? I said, GPS. It was such a mess going on with the GPS, and we don't know the area so well. So I had another miracle. I felt, so my son-in-law, they just said, jump into the car and drive out of here. And they told him where to go through. He went like 200 kilometers an hour. I almost like fainted when I was sitting there in the car because I couldn't even handle the driving. I wasn't sure if I'm going to die from the terrorists, die from the soldiers, or from his driving. I said, okay, my chances are 0 to survive this.
Yeah.
We got to State Road, which is still dangerous. I felt so safe when we got to State Road, which was very weird. Like State Road was empty. But that's what we went through. That time was very, very hard, difficult times. And every moment it was, you hear other news and another guy killed and this guy, this person. And the amount of people that I knew that died or still missing, I don't think my whole life I went through this.
Wow. And I love your message, that smile to another Jew who you might not know, who you might not live the same lifestyle as. That's ultimately bringing that ichud. It's bringing that unity that will ultimately bring the light of Mashiach and for Geula, because that's what we need.
Your smile to another Jew will go a long way, no matter who that Jew is. And like I go in America sometimes. I travel a lot, and I go to New Rochelle. I was just there, and I was in Great Neck for Shabbos. You walk in the street to shul, everyone's saying good Shabbos to you, right? It's like in Brooklyn, they don't do that. I don't
That's
know
what
about
they say.
5 towns.
No, I wonder if that changed. That's the old Brooklyn stereotype. I wonder if
Hey,
it's
guys
still
from
true.
Brooklyn, I'm calling you to start saying good Shabbos to each other.
Gewalt.
There's no
And
Erev.
also-
There's no Erev.
seriously.
There's no Erev. You know?
No Erev? Because you can say Shabbos.
I also wouldn't say a Shabbos if there's no Erev. So,
No, by the way, you could do like this without an Erev. You could do like this, right? But it's so important to say hello to another Jew. I'm telling you, I do this a lot. It brings a smile, and people are like, why is this guy smiling to me? And we realize we're one mishpacha. At the end of the day, the terrorists did not care who they're killing.
Eli Beer, thank you so much for doing what you do. Hashem should continue the miracle of protecting us, and there should be no more life lost. Hashem,
Amen.
everyone should come home safe. And I saw a video this morning of Joey Newcomb by the Kaisel, and he said, very soon this wall is not just going to be a wall. There's going to be a Beis HaMikdash behind it. And you're not just going to bump into a few familiar faces here by the Kaisel. You're going to bump into every single person, every single Yid. We shall be reunited.
Amen.
And I really think this is coming to it because we have no choice. We need to do our ishtadlus to bring Mashiach.
Yeah. Mashiach now.
Amen.
Shkoyach.
It's great to be. I feel like I'm like therapy here. Like I really I have
Listen,
2 therapists.
We won't
here.
send you a bill.
Yeah, it's like this is the cheapest therapy I ever went through. Like talking about, and it's, by the way, letting people out talking. So you did me a mitzvah for me also.
Of course. My
But
pleasure.
now I want a hug
You
I
got
want
it.
to
Rabba.
with the camera. With the
Gewalt.
camera, I need a hug. A hug from a Gingy.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening to this podcast, or of course, watching this podcast. Please leave a rating, leave a review, leave a comment, subscribe to this podcast. We love hearing your feedback. I love reading all of your emails. Email me directly at nachi@meaningfulminute.org. If you'd like to advertise on our podcast, you know I'm a sucker for our good friends, our advertisers. Make sure to send us an email at nison, that is NISON, @meaningfulminute.org, and inquire today what it would look like to have your company be a partner with us here at Meaningful People. Stay tuned. We got another episode coming your way next week. If you want to see clips from this episode, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Meaningful Minute Plus, follow us everywhere. We are literally everywhere. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a great week, guys.